Welcome to the Simon Racing Report, episode 47, World's Fastest Gamer Time. We did this last time for the Visa Vegas E-Race. Now it's time to do it again for another big sim racing event. It's Nick Rowland, back again. Another big event, Nick. More and more passion from you as always. Looking forward to this one. There's so much I want to cover in this next 40 minutes.
Yeah, when it comes to the big events, it seems to be us two jumping on them pretty sharpish. So yeah, this is another good one. Now I got a slight feeling there could be more to come as well.
Yeah, definitely more rounds. Well, I know you had a go in qualifiers too, so you should actually be racing there, which is you didn't
Not
crack the
quite.
top 100 though.
I didn't. I gave it a good go, but I got some things wrong on setup that I've discovered after the event, which is always wonderful. But yeah, I gave it a good crack. It wasn't quite to be. I'm going to go again for Zandvoort. At the time of speaking, I can tell you exactly where I am in the standings. If it decides to load fast enough, I'm 55th in the standings as it stands at the moment.
Oh, you're almost there. Well, you got to be top 20, right, for the next round again? Oh, jeez.
Yep. I see
Yeah.
Mr. Graham Carroll has gone top of the standings on the 34-3.
He's already qualified, though. Why is he doing it again? I have no idea. But car, track, what's it like? We had the McLaren, we had Silverstone. Tell us more.
It's a difficult car. I think it's quite a difficult car to drive. It's very oversteery if you don't get the setup right. You've got to kind of pitch in over the nose and let the rear kind of... Tyre-wise, gone very conservative, I think. It's very long on tyres. The longevity is really good. Loadings work very like rFactor 2 do, so you know that they do heat. They don't have the same degradation as what some other mods do. So degradation-wise, it's pretty good, and it's easily doable for the race distance.
Yeah, and I did like how the car was sliding around a lot. It looked like it was a good challenge to drive.
It is a handful.
Yeah, it's a handful, but it's rFactor 2 as well. I mean, rFactor 2 has always been like that, where the car doesn't always look like if you grab a set of wets in real life and drive them on a dry track, it looks nothing like that. It's the complete opposite, where you're sliding around all the time, even in the dry. It's just all over the place, but it's a good fun, good experience. It's realism too. Not every sim's 100% realistic, but it's still there. But regardless of that, let's go to the event. I don't know what background information to cover. I mean, if you're new to this event, first of all, how does the qualifying system work? So we know that the 20 make the round one final, which we saw yesterday, and so top 5 make it through to the September final. And for the next 3 rounds, we get 5, 5, 5. We already have another 5 qualified who were pre-picked from different sims. Those names we'll cover off later, but it's pretty interesting system, similar to the Visa Vegas E-Race, but something a little bit different with the pre-picked drivers.
Yeah, the pre-picked drivers is a little bit different, but also the system, I guess it is a little bit similar. You kind of subscribe through Steam, and then you get the download available made to you. You've got your hot laps list. You got to make that top 20, and the top 20 Silverstone was covered by 2.5, 3/10, something like that. It was a very small margin for the top 20. And then those top 20 advanced to a Sunday final. So on that point, cutoff is usually about midday on a Thursday. So those drivers, top 20 drivers, will have their laps reviewed and checked. Then they advance to the Sunday final, where they will then race, and then the top 5 race, and then it's the same for Silverstone GP layout, Zandvoort, and Silverstone International. And then the final is on Silverstone National, which, as they said in the commentary, is 3 corners.
Oh, jeez. Well, it's not there's no Australians in this, are there? Because the latency issues will be pretty bad if I made it or somebody else did.
I don't think so, but I have seen a name pop up that I thought may have been Australian. But Joshua Rogers, is he Australian?
Yeah, he's Australian. Oh, geez,
Yeah.
That's not going to end well. rFactor 2 and Australians and the internet. Oh, geez, I can already see trouble.
As of recording this, he is 32nd in the list.
Oh, go Josh. He's pretty quick in any type of tin top or touring car. So
Yeah.
I'm
He's a
looking
he's a
forward to
dab hand. That's what I thought when I saw the name. I was thinking, nah, he's an iRacer for sure.
that. Yeah, it's always, I mean, that's a tough thing though about this event is that a lot of iRacers have had trouble switching over to rFactor 2. But then again, the top 2 times for round 1 were Enzo Benito and Atsej Kirchhoff, and Enzo Benito's an iRacer and Atsej Kirchhoff's sort of 50-50 anyway. I mean, Atsej's good anyway, so you don't.
Yeah, Atsej has covered both sims quite extensively, so I would say Atsej is probably the most versatile, where you've got Enzo dropping across from iRacing into rFactor. So it's impressive, but yeah, I think maybe some of those iRacers had a bit of a baptism of fire as well when it came to the physics element of rFactor 2. I saw a lot of disgruntled, in particular, a certain very, very awesome GT driver currently was not best pleased. Also, the fact he's underage.
Oh, that's never good. Well, actually, you know what? It's only motor racing. I mean, we had, how old was Max Verstappen when he made his F1 testing debut? He was 16 or something. So the
Something
younger
ridiculous.
the better. But the point is,
Younger the better. Is that your motto?
well, until they reach whatever the legal age is in whatever country. Regardless of that, I think this is the biggest. Is it biggest or second biggest event in sim racing history to the Visa Vegas E race? What would you rank it as?
It's a difficult one to call because in terms of financial reward, I would say the Vegas E race was bigger. But in terms of what you actually win for this, it's a full season with McLaren in their simulator. Bono will have no problem running around with 200k. I mean, no anyone would have fun running around with 200k. But this is another level in terms of the actual getting into motorsport. I know some of those dudes have got various jobs with their Formula E teams that they were associated with, but this is like McLaren, the GT car, the F1 car, whatever it may be. This is a big thing, and to get a job out of it for a year as a simulator tester, I don't know. It's impressive, and you've got to believe if you prove yourself, in that simulator, would they consider you putting you forwards for a test day? You just don't know.
Yeah,
I think the difference with this one is the potential. E-race was kind of 200k, that's it, cut, done. This has got so much more potential beyond it.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to do with that 200k because you hear of all those athletes that go bankrupt by the end of their careers. So hopefully that doesn't happen to Bono. But the point is, we had, I want to go through this driver list right now because impressive names. We had Benito Kirchhoff, which we already covered, P1 and P2. Nikodem Wisniewski, I've heard of him for a few years already. He's insanely quick, made the GT Academy finals too in Europe. So he's always been quick. But number 4 in the qualifying sheets was Hani El Sabdi. Never heard of this guy. Apparently he's some Dutch Iraqi. I've never heard of him. I don't know what's going on. He's so quick, insanely quick, consistent. He's impressive. How have I not heard of this guy before?
To be honest with you, even knowing rFactor 2 the way I do, his was a name that I didn't recognise. I got a feeling he drives over at Sim Racing Club though in Virtual Endurance Championship. I've got a feeling. I don't know for absolute definite, but I think that's where he races. The same with Wisniewski.
Yeah, Nikodem's always been there. So he's had his Polish team, Feeder Sport Poland. I think he used to race for quite a while ago. I think they're still
those
under the name.
Yeah, those dudes are still one of the fastest GT prototype teams in rFactor 2 quite comfortably.
Yeah,
they're right up there.
Nikodem was on my podcast. I think it was episode 3 or something back in the day when this podcast was very unlistenable. But he was there with Kuba Brzezinski, who didn't make the top 20, but that's his Polish friend. Regardless of that, Paolo Muya 5th, Peter Breliak 6th. We've heard of all these names. Martin Stefankov, Jeffrey Rietveld, who didn't actually make he allowed Graham Carroll to race by not actually taking the license. Jeffrey's surely got to be back. That guy is always been a quick sim racer.
Jeff is bad fast. I mean, I was with him in 2013 at Precision, and barring some issues that he had technically that was discovered literally years later, then he probably would have rivaled Bono. he is such a fast driver, but unfortunately for the race on Sunday, he's actually in New York at the moment.
Ah, what's he doing in New York?
I
Holiday?
do not know. Think so.
Well, he better not be, younger the better. He just better be keeping it real in New York because he wants to come back over to, come back home after the trip's done. But Ricardo Costa 9th, Kevin Ryan 10th. Fairly
That's the name
unfamiliar.
I don't know. I don't know Kevin Ryan. That's a new
Yeah,
one on me.
same with me as well. Arnaud Lacombe sounds like a sexy name. Never heard of him either, but I like
No,
that
and
name.
he's second around Zandvoort at the moment.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and sometimes, so people always think in sim racing that home tracks make a huge difference. And it's not because you live there, it's because generally you practice your home tracks more because that's, where you've grown up and that's been your favorite track. So, a lot of Brits are very good around Silverstone. A lot
Except
of Aussies
me,
are good
because
around.
I absolutely hate it.
yeah. A lot of Aussies are good around Bathurst and, French. What French racetracks? Paul Ricard or Magny Course? I don't know which one they value more, but regardless,
Neither.
neither. They're pretty good tracks, though. I like the Magny-Cours more. We'll see what happens with Paul Ricard in F1 next year, but that's a conversation for another day. Rudy Van Buren, 13th, excuse me. I forgot Miguel Ballester as well. Now, before we talk about Miguel and what happened later on in the event, we'll just cover his name off for now, because what happened in the event was ridiculous. But Rudy, insanely quick, always known that. He's very impressive. Even did a couple FSR races over the years. Back in 2011, I remember, and a few other races.
He's done a couple this year. So Rudy primarily will drive in GP He's in Super League there, which is the top tier F1 tier. He also drives in the ITC as well, which is VWC's touring car series. And I know that he's done, I think it's 2 FSR races this year, but yeah, he wasn't. I don't think he was a fan of the mod, but then I don't think anyone is. And what else have we got? He's done quite a few different things over the years, but he's probably up there in the top 3 of fastest rFactor 2 drivers, I'd say.
Yeah, he's very quick. I like him. Good personality. Someone who
Great personality. Extremely self-confident, but not arrogant.
No, that's a good thing. I mean, you have to always have self-belief in this, but you have to have a bit of respect for everybody else. And I think if you're trying to win a competition where you're a sim racer and possibly a race car driver, this is what GT Academy looks for in drivers all the time, is personable people who aren't too over-the-top arrogant, and they're just ready to be marketable, and that's what they always look for. So go Rudy. But let's cross off the names quickly after that. Miguel.
His without doubt, like his interview at the end was just spot on.
He was good, yes. Miguel Morales, I can't pronounce that name, 14th. Jack Keithley, Eros Musculi, heard of all these names. Chembalik Bassi, Lee Morris, the good old Lee, he's back. And then we had Mohammed Patel. Yeah, by the way, I've raced against Mohammed for a number of years now. Good to see him in a competition final for once. He's always around there. He's always quick, and he finally gets where he deserves. So hats off to him on that. And I can't even remember who else was on the grid, but I know Graham Carroll was there, Francisco Lopez, Samuel Lebert. They didn't even make the top 20. I think names either pulled out or something happened there, Nick. But they made race 1 at Silverstone. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
So,
but again, these are drivers though that have got quite a long pedigree within rFactor generally, whether it be rFactor 1 or rFactor 2. So they're not foreign to the sim, and they are names that are more common, that are more known.
Yes. So so you said Jeffrey Reitveld couldn't make it in the top 20. That allowed, as we mentioned, a few other drivers through. Who haven't we covered? Oh, we haven't covered the 5 drivers who were pre-picked from different sims. Do you like the list? I know Bono, Grego, everybody knows them if you're an rFactor or an iRacing, but the other sort of sims that were classed aren't really that big of sims. So, I mean, you got Forza Motorsport, Project Cars, Codemasters F1. I'm interested to see how those guys goes. Harry Jacks, David Legoff, Aurelien Mallet, if that's my French correct. Interesting names.
And it looks like that Harry Jacks has done quite a lot of promotion already for McLaren. I don't know if anyone saw Ted's notebook from Hungary.
Yeah.
He was actually there. when Ted walked into the motorhome for McLaren, in the right-hand corner, you could see Harry Jacks Racing. That was quite interesting. So, I mean, obviously Bono and Gregor, we don't really need to cover because we know these guys inside and out. I think it's going to be interesting how the other three bear up against these dudes because, yeah, like you said, they're not really sims they're coming from. They're simcades, really, into a very challenging sim. Now, how you compare the iRacing to rFactor 2, that's your decision. But the fact is they are another level compared to those other ones. So I'm interested to see how they do. Very interested to see how they do.
Yeah.
My gut feeling, they're going to be at the back.
Oh, don't say that. I think they're going to be quick, but I don't think. At worst, they will make the top maybe 10, but I don't think they have a chance if they have to get used to the sim. Now, it depends how much practice they put in, because remember
Well, there is that. I mean, they will have the head start, but you've got to think of if you put Bono and Gregor in there already, 5 that are already there, so, you know, the 5 that are qualified, which you'll go through in a minute. Just looking at the list now, Ollie's third, Ollie Piller. Arnaud Lecombe is second, and there is an unbelievable amount of names I'm looking at in the top 20 at the moment that are phenomenally fast. So I don't know. I think they're going to be towards the back, if I'm honest.
So last thing on this, because I want to stop covering names. We've been doing that for about 10 minutes now. So I think going back to GT Academy, not a lot of people consider Gran Turismo a simulator, but then the guys who are quick there, and even guys who are quick in rFactor, do well in Gran Turismo. So, I mean, if you have driving skill, it doesn't matter what racing game or sim you're in, you're going to be near the top. So I don't want to count these guys out too much, because then again, we don't know what Gregor's going to do in rFactor 2. I've never seen Gregor in rFactor for 15 years or whatever. You know, you've hardly ever seen him there. So he's always been the iRacer. See if he has time to practice that. But I want to go back to the broadcast now. Good production. That
wasn't a jab at all.
No, I like Gregor. I'm saying that. I think he's got to prove himself in rFactor. He's always quick in iRacing. 5 championships, but prove yourself in rFactor, Gregor. Let's go. So you had Miguel in the broadcast with one name, apparently, because can't pronounce his last name.
Second.
Yeah. So he's the 2013 GT Academy winner. He was paired with Ben Constadouris, who we know Ben from a lot of different. What's he done? He's done a lot of broadcasts in terms of the endurance world, and
he does a lot of coverage for people like BT Sport, Eurosport, Motorsport.com TV as it is now.
Yeah.
So he does quite a lot of. I'm sure at one point he was an F1 reporter, but I think mainly now he covers quite a lot within Europe. But he definitely does GT and endurance racing.
He's related to Bob Constadouris, isn't he? I assume. Stad, maybe? Uncle?
I'm not sure.
I have no idea.
I'm going to say yes, but I have no idea.
Yeah, it's very weird if you have the same uncommon surname in the same sport in the same job, journalism. So, yeah, it'd be pretty coincidental. But Scott Woodwiss also made it. He got the commentary gig there too. A guy who started off in sim racing too. A lot of FSR work, a lot of rFactor work. He ended up getting a gig, got into the booth. To be honest, overall broadcast, they made rFactor 2 look so good compared to the Visa Vegas E race. I was quite impressed.
Very first thing I put on social media, made rFactor 2 look good. rFactor 2 is still lagging behind quite extensively in terms of optimization and DX11, etc. But they actually did a tremendous job to make it look good. Is it iRacing level? Not even close. But they made the sim look good, and hats off to them for it. They actually must have invested in proper kit to stream that.
Yeah. And it was just, they picked a good track too, in terms of picking Silverstone. It was made by whatever they're called now, Studio something. I can't
397.
remember. Yeah, I can't even remember the numbers. I keep calling them ISI for some reason. So
That's what they were
yeah,
back in there.
back in the day, it was 10 years, everybody. If you're new to sim racing, it was 10 years. It's hard to get out of your head. So the lights went out, and even I was caught out by Ben Considouris getting so excited for the start. He was like, yeah, let's go. And then he's like, oh, wait, formation lap. That got a good laugh out of me at work. I was starting to watch, and yeah, people are wondering why I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, I just read something funny on this spreadsheet and stuff. So I had to try and get away with that. But I think who else got caught out by the start? So was it Ballester now? We go back to that situation where Ben Considouris in the commentary booth, he gets caught out. Whole crowd has a laugh probably.
Oh, hang on. There's a little bit before this as well. We need to. So prior to the race going live, there was a full debrief, and I'm talking maybe hour and a half before the event. There was a full briefing, across the board of how this was going to be admin, how this is going to be stewarded, everything. They knew step-by-step process of how this event was going to run. Now, rFactor 2 has, I've seen this before, it's been done in Virtual Endurance Championship, but they'll set the green lights, but they'll treat it as the first rolling lap. So it's basically a rolling start, and it's to avoid, I think it's to avoid the safe bar being a bit weird, but that's what they're allowed to do. And I don't think Ballester understood that and went for it at the start and crashed into, of all people, Enzo Benito.
The top qualifier. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying anything against Ballester. Like, we all make silly mistakes, but he has to have a surname similar to the former FIA president, which just makes things much more shady.
Yeah.
So you just know there's some shit going on over there. But hopefully he makes it back for the next round, because you never want to see that. I want to see Benito qualify too. I know they don't want to restart the event. And yeah, we know it was Miguel's fault, but I mean, you can't penalize Benito for that. You got to restart the event for Benito and then disqualify Ballester. But maybe they didn't know Enzo had damage or something. So, I mean, that's another question in itself. Because when the real start happened, because there were 2 starts to this race, everyone got excited the first time, formation lap, excited again. Benito pulls off. Was that the damage, right, from the start, we assumed? Yep. That's what we saw in the brilliant post-race analysis they did, which I quite liked. But that was, I mean, as I said, you can't really penalize Enzo. I know it's part of motor racing, but this is one competition. It's not like Enzo's got that contract to be a Formula One driver and he's going to show up next race and make up for it. That could be it. What if he can't make the next few qualifying rounds? But I think
I hope he can, and I hope he comes back, because I know that Ballester is 8th in this current week, so he's back up, trying to shoot for it again. I hope that Enzo'd come back and go for another week. We've got a few days until it closes, so I really, really do hope that he puts himself put himself in the mix, because he deserves it. I mean, to be top qualifying then for that to happen. Yeah, I mean, it was a fast call at the start, actually.
Yeah. Well, like, the good thing I liked about the event overall, because not much happened in the event, but it was quite uneventful in a good way, in that I like how it represented sim race as well, in that they're not all crazy. They're not your rec festival online public server drivers. They're real professionals, and I think it really represented sim racing well. You had a couple clashes here and there, so I think I'm selling itself short. Like, it wasn't a boring event at all. It was just a normal motor racing race where you have your boring periods, you have your eventful periods where people clash, and you have battles, passes. You had a very exciting ending with P2 to P5 battling away, and stupidly enough, I was thought if somebody throws up the inside here, they're quite stupid, because you're going to qualify, just don't pass, which they did exactly as I said. So I quite liked it. I thought it represented sim racing well.
I tend to agree with you. I think as and to go out on McLaren's YouTube as well, you're going to get you're likely to get a few more casuals tuning in, and I thought it presented sim racing in a very positive light. Let's just discard the start. The rest of it from that point onwards, I thought it presented itself in a very, very positive way. The drafting effects of some of the cars might need to be a bit reviewed because it was very, very difficult to get close enough to be able to pass. But other than that, I thought the race, the way that it looked, the physics, the nature of the event, I thought it was significantly smoother than what the Vegas e-race was.
Well, what can the Visa Vegas E-Race learn from this event overall? I mean, what should we cover here? Should we cover the looks? Should we cover the way it was run, the mod, the car? What can they cover?
Well, production-wise, I guess they were production. There was two very, very different surroundings. You know, you're sitting in a garage at Silverstone with all your technical gurus around you, whereas you're sitting in a massive conference hall on massive screens on a commentator desk. It's a bit different. So I'm going to discard that one because they are literally completely different. You can't really take those two into consideration. From a broadcast point of view, firstly, because they were all on their own machines, they exploited their own natural abilities within their own systems. That's key. I mean, I know everyone was at the E-race and it was pretty cool to see everyone, but we already know months down the line how bad some of those setups were and how bad the input lag was as well. So I think there was something to be taken away from it. But what I quite liked is the fact that they did take all those people at home, but they essentially made like a studio atmosphere out of it.
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting. And they still commentated it in the same sort of way. Say, for example, you were to do it or I was to do it. And Scott has done previously in the past, and he's just carried on doing it as he does now. So I don't know. I think there were the nature of RaceSpot and those other broadcasters. They pulled through some of that essence of how a sim race is broadcast to the wider public, and then threw in a studio atmosphere with it. And for me, I actually thought it was very, very well done. Will it be sustainable? Probably not, because there's probably quite a bit. McLaren can do it, but I actually thought they did a very good job overall. I was impressed by it, especially considering it's sim racing, which in terms of an e-sport is quite low down the pecking order.
Yeah, well, at the same time, I think there's a lot to learn too for every single broadcaster in terms of, not that they're not, because I know I speak to Will Vincent all the time, and he's always watching and learning, and he's, whether it's a broadcast by the Sky Sports F1 or if it's a broadcast watched by 5 people, you could learn something that you're like, oh, let's try that, or let's innovate on that, or make that better, and I like that idea, and this is something where everybody should watch and say, oh, the post-race production with the replays that were easy to just pull up and talk about, and direction was great, because they knew what replay they were talking about, went straight to it, well spoken, and it was well done, well made. Sign me up, McLaren. Sign myself and Nick up for our post-race podcasts and everything, and we'll do it for you too. So, on that note, I really liked how Rudy Van Buren after the race also said he only put in about 200 laps to get in other people's heads. I don't think I've ever put less than 200 laps in a day for even just a casual race. I mean, is that getting in other drivers' heads?
The crazy thing is that I speak to Rudy quite a lot, and the thing is that is true. He doesn't actually have a lot of time. He said it in the broadcast. He's just started a new job. So he's getting himself, acclimatized with that. He is a fitness fanatic. So I know that he goes to the gym a hell of a lot, or what is it, CrossFit, does CrossFit and all that type of stuff. So his time is limited. But what Rudy does better than most, and I'll be honest with you, he takes his setup and he knows in his mind straight away, yeah, I know how to make this right for me. And he knows within a handful of laps, no, that's not right. I know what I need to change to make it for me. And he can do that off touch and feel. Probably one of the fastest I think I've ever known anyone to do that. He just knows that he needs a tweak of roll bar, he needs a different spring, something like that. He will instinctively click and know that.
Yeah, those guys frustrate and fascinate me at the same time. They're like double F drivers where you just want to be like them, but you know you can't. You know you're missing some sort of innate natural feel and ability, as you mentioned, for the car, and they jump in and they're just on it. And it's, Rico Alatalo is the best example for any person trying to make a comparison there to different races. He just used to jump in on no practice and could put it on pole in most events, and he's just like that. That's just the way he is. But one interesting point of note as well is Hani El Sabdi, who ended up finishing third. He said he did most of this event on his own. Was that a trouble for you to do most of the event on your own? Was that hard because you're having to learn all the setup on your own, learn the car, you don't have advice from teammates? Because I know how hard it is to be on your own for any sim racing event / race.
For me, I mean, the one thing about myself is that I've always been a better racer than I have qualifier. So that's probably point one. Point two, I've never been that great in building and making a setup. I can sort of get it to quite a nice point. I get a car to feel nice, and then someone else will grab it and just make it hot and amazing and ridiculously fast. So I think my own skills are slightly limited, but I think the difference between me and someone, say like Rudy or those top end drivers, is that I always question my own driving and my own ability, where they don't, and they will just simply change the setup and make it work for them. I'm always like, oh, did I do that right? Like, am I really attacking that corner the right way? Could I do something differently myself? And those guys are like, nah, I nailed that corner. I know what I need to do. I've got understeer. I'm going to change a few clicks there and I'm sorted. That's the difference between the two, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then you get the guys who just click anywhere and somehow the setup change works and then they're fast. So you get those guys too. But then you actually, as you said, get the guys who understand the car and they're able to tailor it to their driving style, which reminds me, by the way, they can still make setup changes as far as I know to the McLaren.
Yeah.
So, which is important because there are certain fixed setups in certain races where they might not suit your driving style, and so you're stuck with that fixed setup. And I think it's really good that they have allowed setting up the car as well, because that's important when you're trying to go for a job as a McLaren sim driver in the simulator. You got to be able to know how to tweak the car and understand the feel for the car.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's one of the big things, because, for example, if this had been a equal setup, if you will, a locked setup, then I think someone like Jack Keithley would have been higher.
Oh.
Whereas Jack doesn't. He's a bit like me. He doesn't. Oh no, Jack's got more natural ability. So I just don't think he has the same level of knowledge of setups, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference. He just doesn't have the knowledge. Whereas if it was equal, I think you'd see Jack higher up.
He's a human being. He can learn. No one stopping him.
No, not at all. And I think that's where you get the difference between the certain drivers, and that's where you get the real sort of raw talent coming through.
Was it Jack Keithley or was it somebody else who was racing on like a 1999 steering wheel that had dust all over it? I can't remember who that was.
Jack posted up a picture of his G29 that had dust all over it. Quite frankly, I'm not gonna lie, it looked pretty disgusting.
Yeah, I saw those photos too. It did actually motivate me a little bit because I haven't actually touched my G27 in over a year, and yes, I still have a G27. So I don't know. I'm thinking
G27 wheel, G27 pedals.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you don't need all these little. It does help if you have the Bodnar this and the bloody Heisenkerveld, whatever you pronounce it, that. But it's actually motivating me seeing all these names. We used to race against them all, and I'm like, I swear I had him one day. I had that guy, and he's in the top 20. So I'm like, I want to go back and actually, I want to get back into this. We'll see what happens with time. That's my issue, is that I'm like Rudy, where I've got no time, but I'm not as talented, so I can't actually qualify for the event without spending 5-6 hours a day.
I don't really have the time either. I just try to maximize the time that I do get and see what I can do. I've already put some laps in for Zandvoort, so it's just a case of these guys are either naturally gifted and can do it in a few laps like Rudy did, or they work a little bit harder, like Lee Morris, for example, turned in a ridiculous amount of laps and sneaks in the lower half. But either way, as long as you're in the 20, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And what was that start Lee Morris had? Every time I think of Lee Morris, I think of his Spa start where he went from P18 to P3, or I can't remember, in FSR. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah.
Just crazy start right there. The good old FSR days. But final couple of things I want to knock off before we wrap up here. Very quick podcast this time around. But one thing is hot lappers versus any race pace type of driver, which you mentioned before. Did we see much of a difference this round? Because a lot of the fast guys were still fast in the race. We did see a couple differences, but like Graham Carroll was a big jump. But I don't know who, most of the time, anybody who's quick in qualifying would be quick in the race.
I think we saw two things actually. I think we saw the people that have to graft very, very hard but can still produce a fast time, because when it comes to one lap shootout, they can't do it. That's one thing. I think the other thing we saw is the fact of the cream will always rise to the top, and Graham or whoever it may be may have been sitting in the midfield, which you think, oh, hang on, why is he down there? Come the race, come qualifying for the race as well. Anything like that, and Mr. GC jumps straight back up. It's just natural. You get those drivers. Rudy was only 13th, and yet he wins the entire thing. The guy is just wickedly talented. Graham Carroll, wickedly talented. Wisniewski was up there the entire time in the top 20, the qualifying and the race. So the cream will rise. Fran Lopez was top for a long time and drifted backwards. So, it goes to show the difference between the gifted ones that can qualify and race and those that can just qualify.
Is that the same Fran Lopez that went, I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2015, you went flying at Circuit of the Americas in FSR Pro or whatever the bottom division is? Maybe it's just somebody else with the same name, but it was a PSR driver.
Not too sure.
Then. Yeah. Well, that was hilarious for those who might be listening to this and remember. But final thing is, I think Silverstone was a good pick for round one. It appealed to everybody, a track that's familiar to most people. It looked good. We covered this half before, but I think, was it a good pick for round one?
Yep, I've got no problem with that. I personally hate it, but I think it's a good track, and it's a quite it evens the playing field a little bit more as well, and it goes to show who can really commit to things like Sector 2, and it goes to show where the talent lies within Sector 2 as well. But yeah, no problem with it. I think it's quite interesting as well, the fact you've got McLaren, British-based team, Silverstone, and you've got 397 who are predominantly Dutch, and then now you go into Zandvoort, so I think it works quite well.
Yeah, well, next round is at Zandvoort. It was only released a couple of days ago, wasn't it, for rFactor 2? So hopefully no bugs at the track, and I might actually...
Nope, not that I found yet.
Oh, okay, good. No invisible walls at Eau Rouge like they used to find at Spa?
No, nothing like that.
Oh,
but I think you'll find that these ones are actually built by 397 as well, so they're going to be the top quality.
Yeah, go Studio 397. I still remember when I was doing practice at Spa, and as soon as we hit Eau Rouge, and I'm not making this up, I literally had the biggest scare jump off the chair when I hit the invisible wall. It was like, whoa! And you just get so frightened, and your adrenaline and your heart starts beating and everything. It's just a thrilling yet deathly experience if it was in real life, obviously. So we had Rudy Van Buren qualify, Nikodem Wisniewski, Hani El Sabti, Graham Carroll, Atsay Kirchhoff. They're through to the next to the final actually, and we should be able to see Miguel with one name, I assume, at Zandvoort 2 in the production. Everything will be the same, I assume, for round 2. I don't know if you have any news on that.
In terms of production, I don't really see it being any different. I don't see why it should be any different. Why change something that was already pretty good, in my opinion? I thought they did a very solid job. So as far as I'm aware, yeah, it's all the same for round 2, and then the same will be for round 3.
Yeah, perfect. And last thing is that it's good seeing production from people who, I mean, we don't know how much sim racing experience they have, but people with production experience in the industry, and they do all these different things with the cameras and how the post-race show is structured. It's just as I said before, a lot of good ideas can be picked up, and a lot of bad ideas too can be noticed, which shouldn't be replicated. So it's a good learning curve these early days for the sim racing world. But thanks for coming on again, Nick. We do this
No problem, mate.
for every big event. Surely we'll do it again for the final. We'll wait and see what happens. But very short podcast as always this round. You can catch it on the SimonRacingReport.com. Links to YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, the RSS feed, all there on the homepage. Like the podcast on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at JohnnyS8. What are you, Nick, again? You're at Nico888? I can't even remember. Just at Nico.
Nico888.
888, there we go. Follow him on Twitter. And always, seriously, a lot of podcasts out this week. We had the Jamie Fluke one. We had Kevin Ellis Jr. We've got this one too. Many more coming for the future. More time on my hands. So looking forward to it all. But stay tuned as always. So take care.